Today we're comparing 3 cool stories, 3 different situations, 3 very different people. One thought a closed ledger could be reopened with nothing but a tearful demand. Another mistook a clear reflection in a storefront window for a blank check. And one treated a neighbor's entire life as a public parking spot for her personal emergencies. Let's see whose sense of ownership got the most unambiguous return to sender. They mocked my achievements for years. Now they demand free legal help. My family's currently furious with me, and apparently I'm supposed to feel guilty about it. I don't, at least not in the way they want me to. I grew up in a miserable little town in Florida where ambition was treated like a personality defect, and living in the moment mostly meant making the same bad decisions over and over, pretending that was somehow charming. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college, and nobody seemed particularly interested in changing that. Being loud, social, athletic, and impulsive was the gold standard. Anything else was suspicious. I was very much anything else. I hated the heat, hated being outside, and preferred books to parties. I played chess. I joined the debate team. I actually liked school and did well in it. From an early age, that put me on the outside of my own family. They teased me constantly, called me boring, acted like my interests were something I'd grow out of once I lightened up. They made time for my siblings' sports games, cheered from the bleachers, planned their weekends around tournaments. When I had debates or competitions, they usually forgot or decided it wasn't really their thing. That pattern never changed. It wasn't just my parents either. Aunts, uncles, cousins all treated academic stuff like it didn't really count as real achievement. I learned pretty quickly that if I wanted encouragement, I had to find it somewhere else. So I did. I focused on school, then college, then law school. The farther I went, the less we had in common. Phone calls became rare, visits became awkward. Eventually, most of my family stopped calling me at all unless they needed something. Now I'm happily married and I run my own family law practice. My husband's a judge in a neighboring county. We have a quiet life, a comfortable home, and a lot of responsibilities. Over the years, extended relatives have periodically resurfaced with quick questions or vague requests for help that were very obviously legal advice dressed up as casual conversation. I always shut it down. I'd say I was busy, recommend they find an attorney, and move on. I didn't feel bad about it. Relationships that only exist when someone wants a favor aren't really relationships. Recently, everything came to a head. My older sister lost custody of her kids to her ex-husband and now only has them every other weekend. From what I've gathered, her case was messy. Her history was dragged into court, and none of it worked in her favor. Apparently, she wasn't happy with the outcome or with the lawyer she hired, so she decided the solution was to call me. After years of silence, my phone suddenly rang with her name on the screen. She didn't bother easing into it. She launched straight into crying, begging, and telling me I was her only hope. She wanted me to represent her for free and fix the situation so she could get her kids back. I listened, then told her the truth. I said I didn't even know her children, that she hadn't spoken to me in years, and that I wasn't willing to take on her case. I told her I wasn't obligated to donate my time, my staff's time, and my resources just because we shared DNA. She was shocked, actually shocked. She kept saying, "But you're my sister," like that was supposed to override everything else. I pointed out that being sisters hadn't mattered much when she went years without checking in on me. I told her no again. She hung up crying. Then my mother called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask what happened. She went straight into how disappointed she was in me, how selfish I was being, how family helps family. She lumped my sister together with every other relative I'd ever refused to help and framed it like I'd been hoarding my success out of spite. At that point, something in me snapped. I asked her when the last time any of them had called me just to talk was. Not to ask for advice, not to ask for favors, just to see how I was doing. She didn't have an answer. I pointed out that one of my cousins is a landscaper. He could have offered to help maintain my yard in exchange for legal services. He didn't. He just wanted free work. My sister could have asked to pay me later or offered anything at all, but instead she expected me to drop everything and clean up her mess out of obligation. I explained that my work isn't free just because I'm related to someone. I have an office lease, employees, insurance, overhead, and a schedule that's already full. When I take on a case, it costs me money even before I earn any. I told her that what they were asking for wasn't generosity, it was entitlement. She didn't like that. She accused me of thinking I was better than everyone else and said I'd forgotten where I came from. I told her I hadn't forgotten, I'd just grown beyond it. She hung up on me. That lines the whole story in a single sentence. It's not about holding a grudge, it's about finally naming the truth. They didn't value you until they needed something, and you're refusing to pretend that's what family means. Now my family's angry, whispering about me, telling anyone who'll listen that I've turned my back on them. What they won't admit is that they turned their backs on me first, years ago, and only remembered I existed once my education and career became useful to them. I didn't ruin the relationship, I just refused to let it be transactional anymore. Your family only calls you when they need a lawyer, but they expect you to be their free legal superhero? Sounds like they're trying to draft you into the family law league without any membership dues. And our second story. A woman blocked the bathroom door and screamed that I stole her watch. Many moons ago, on what should have been a completely forgettable shopping trip, I learned that some people can turn absolutely feral over the most mundane things. I was running errands after work, nothing dramatic, just grabbing a few necessities and trying to get home without talking to anyone more than required. At some point, nature called, and I headed for the store's restroom. I work in healthcare, and after years on the job, certain habits are burned into my muscle memory whether I'm on the clock or not. One of those habits is how I wash my hands. I always remove my watch before I even get to the sink. Fingertips to wrists, thorough scrub, rinse, dry, then watch back on. I don't think about it anymore, it's automatic. So that's exactly what I did. I used the restroom, washed my hands the way I always do, dried them, and picked up my watch as I headed toward the door. I was fastening it back onto my wrist while pushing the door open, already mentally moving on to the next aisle. That's when I almost ran straight into a woman standing directly in the doorway. She was in her 50s, well put together, gripping a shopping cart like she was guarding a toll booth. There was no way around her. She smiled at first in that tight, overly familiar way strangers sometimes do when they've decided they're entitled to your attention. "That's an interesting watch," she said, eyes locked on my wrist. "Where'd you get it?" I shrugged, still polite, because at that point there was nothing weird about the interaction. "It was a gift," I said. "Pretty sure they got it from Amazon." Her expression changed instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by something sharp and suspicious. "I don't think so," she said flatly. "That's my watch. I left it in there earlier." I actually laughed a little, thinking she was joking or confused. "No, ma'am," I said. "It's mine. I just took it off to dry my hands and I'm putting it back on." That was the exact moment the switch flipped. 1 second she was a mildly odd stranger, and the next she was screaming at full volume like someone had lit a fuse inside her chest. "Give me back my watch," she shrieked. "Thief! Thief!" The sound echoed down the hallway outside the restroom. I froze for half a second, completely stunned by how fast things escalated. Before I could even process it, she shoved her shopping cart sideways, wedging it against the doorframe so I couldn't get past her. The exit was blocked, and she was advancing on me, eyes wild, hands reaching for my wrist. This is the point of no return. Her claim isn't just mistaken, it's weaponized. Blocking the exit turns a weird accusation into a physical entrapment. The switch from polite stranger to screaming captor happens in a heartbeat, and it's terrifying because it makes no sense. Instinct kicked in hard. I backed up, heart racing, and realized I was about to be trapped in a bathroom hallway by a screaming stranger. I shoved the cart hard enough to knock it and her backward, just enough to create space, then bolted. I darted out into the main part of the store, looking desperately for an employee, security, anyone. Of course, this store apparently operated on a strict every employee must be invisible policy. She abandoned her cart and came after me. I could hear her shoes slapping against the floor as she lunged, grabbing at my arm, trying to rip the watch straight off my wrist. I kept twisting away, flailing my arm like an idiot just to keep her from getting a grip. We must have looked completely unhinged, circling each other while she yelled and I kept backing away. There were shoppers everywhere, staring. Some froze with their carts half pushed, mouths open. Others pretended not to see anything, suddenly very interested in cereal boxes. No one stepped in. No one said a word. It was like being on stage while everyone in the audience decided this was entertainment, not an emergency. Finally, she made one last desperate grab. She lunged hard, overcommitted, and lost her balance. Her feet tangled and she went down in a heap on the floor. The second she hit the ground, the script changed again. She started wailing at the top of her lungs. "Help!" she cried. "She attacked me and stole my watch." I backed away as far as I could, hands up, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "It's my watch," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm even though my hands were shaking. "She attacked me. Someone please call the police. She's crazy." That finally got a reaction. A few people pulled out their phones, others started whispering. The attention shifted, and I saw the calculation happen on her face in real time. She looked around, saw she wasn't going to get the crowd instantly on her side, and suddenly the performance ended. She scrambled to her feet, glaring at me with pure hatred. "You could have just given me the watch instead of causing all this," she snapped. Like this entire disaster was somehow my fault? Then she turned and practically ran for the exit, disappearing out the front doors before anyone could stop her. I stood there for a moment, adrenaline still buzzing through me, trying to explain to the small cluster of people nearby that the watch really was mine, that I hadn't stolen anything, that I'd just been attacked by a stranger. No one really cared. The moment the spectacle ended, they lost interest. Cards started rolling again, conversations resumed. It was like nothing had happened. I finished my shopping in a daze, checking over my shoulder the entire time. I half expected her to come back with a manager or the police, but she never did. I never saw her again, despite shopping at that store plenty of times afterward. To this day, I still don't know if she was genuinely delusional, trying to pull some kind of bizarre theft scam, or just looking for a target who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. What I do know is that I've never put my watch on near a public restroom door since. Some lessons stick with you whether you want them to or not. And our last story. Karen thinks she owns every part of the neighborhood. Yesterday morning started out quiet and ordinary, the kind of morning that tricks you into thinking the universe is feeling generous. I was on my front porch with a mug of coffee, slowly watering my plants, enjoying the weather, and keeping an eye on my phone because I was waiting for my delivery. Nothing dramatic, just a calm start to the day. That peace lasted exactly as long as it took for my new neighbor to pull up and park her car diagonally across my driveway, blocking it completely like she was trying to set some kind of record. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This woman has a habit of blocking my driveway for no reason at all, despite having her own two-car driveway that's almost always empty. What makes this worse is that my niece has been staying with us during the holidays. She's diabetic, has only one kidney, and that kidney's operating at about 40%. Last week, when this same neighbor blocked my driveway again, paramedics had to pound on her door for 10 minutes so they could get her car moved after my niece had a severe grand mal seizure. Even then, instead of apologizing, she berated the EMTs and complained that there was plenty of room to carry that thing around in my car. That memory was still very fresh in my mind as I watched her casually lock her car and start walking toward her house. I asked her calmly to please not block my driveway because I was expecting a grocery delivery. Without missing a beat, she snapped back, "You don't even have a car. I just need to change my outfit." I told her again that a delivery driver would be arriving any minute, that the order was large, and that her own driveway was completely empty. That's when she lost it. She screamed, "Oh my God, I spilled my Starbucks on my shirt and I need to change. Don't be rude, you bee." Then marched inside, leaving her car parked across my driveway with the windows rolled down. At that point, I was done arguing. My shopper, Julie, pulled up right then. She's become a friend over the past year, and I asked if she wouldn't mind waiting for a moment while I cleared the driveway. She shrugged and said, "Take your time." I picked up my garden hose and went back to watering my plants, which just so happened to line both sides of my driveway. I wasn't rushing, I wasn't aiming, I was watering my garden. Karen came running out of her house, still wearing the same ruined outfit, and started screaming, "My windows are down! You're ruining my car!" She drove into her vehicle, trying to move it, while I continued watering, completely unbothered. Julie pulled into the driveway once it was clear and started unloading groceries, laughing so hard she had to stop and catch her breath. That's when Karen came stomping back over, vibrating with rage. She started yelling that I had destroyed her car, ruined her morning, and made her late for work. Then she turned on Julie and screamed, "Who makes deliveries this early? This is harassment. I'm calling your company and getting you fired." She turned back to me and shouted, "You don't even use your driveway. Why do you care if I park there?" I calmly picked the hose back up and told her my plants needed watering and she should move. She shrieked, "Don't you dare turn that water on! Don't you dare attack me!" I told her plainly that she had two choices, move off my property or get wet. She stepped directly into my garden and sneered, "Go ahead, I dare you." This is where she sealed her own fate. Her dare wasn't a challenge, it was a trap she set for herself. You gave her a clear, reasonable choice, and she chose the path of maximum confrontation, believing there would be no consequences. So I turned the hose on. She absolutely lost her mind, screaming that I assaulted her, that she feared for her life, that she was calling the police and pressing charges. Julie, absolute legend that she is, told Karen she'd been ready to leave 10 minutes ago, but now she was staying specifically so she could speak to the cops and make sure her customer wasn't harassed. Karen called 911, making noises I didn't know a human could make. I offered Julie a cup of coffee while we waited. 10 minutes later, 2 city cops pulled up. Karen launched into hysterics about being attacked and demanded I be arrested. One officer stayed with her while the other came up on the porch to talk to us. We explained everything. He laughed, out loud. Karen heard it and immediately started screaming about badge numbers, discrimination, and her rights being violated. Everyone involved was white, including her, which somehow made it even more impressive. The laughing officer asked me if I'd told her to leave my property. I said yes, repeatedly. He turned to Karen and told her she needed to leave or she'd be arrested for trespassing. She stepped off my property into the street and threatened to have the police chief fired. The officer glanced at her car, smiled, and asked for her license, registration, and proof of insurance. She demanded to know what she was being ticketed for because she was a legal United States citizen. He calmly explained she was being cited for dead tags, blocking a fire hydrant, and driving without insurance. She admitted she didn't have insurance, and that sealed it. He wrote the tickets, then informed her she couldn't legally drive the car. He called a tow truck. Julie and I nearly choked on our coffee laughing. Karen screamed about communism, racism against white women, and favoritism, while the tow operator hooked her car. When she interfered, the second officer finally snapped and told her to shut up or be arrested for disorderly conduct and possibly placed on a mental health hold. The tow truck drove off with her car. Karen ran inside screaming about lawsuits, trauma, and lost wages. The stoic officer handed me his card and said to call him if this ended up in civil court because he'd testify. Later that afternoon, Karen's husband came over and apologized. He admitted this wasn't new behavior, that she refused treatment, and that they'd had to move before because of her need to control everyone. While he spoke, she screamed at him from the porch about betrayal, divorce, and imaginary affairs. I gave him pamphlets from the domestic abuse shelter where I volunteer and the card of a divorce attorney we work with, and he thanked me. Karen's shrieking echoed down the street. The plants looked great by the end of the day. My groceries were put away. And for the first time since she moved in, my driveway stayed blissfully empty. All 3 stories were about maintaining boundaries against entitlement, whether from family, strangers, or neighbors. The lawyer refused to be used, the shopper refused to be bullied, and the homeowner refused to be inconvenienced. Each protagonist stayed calm, held their line, and let the other person's own actions bring the consequence. There's a shared lesson here. You don't have to escalate to win. Sometimes just not backing down is enough. Which response did you find the most satisfying? Cast your vote in the comments. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.